Hi, my name is Carina and welcome to the Carina Chronicles. Today I'm going to take you through my statistics of 2022. The best, the worst and everything noteworthy in between. So let's start with that. So I watched back my last year's video of this. I really love to make that. I really remember that. I also loved to look back on it. But it was a very messy video because I lost all my footage, needed to do everything again. So it was really messy. I'm going to try to make it a little bit more structured and a little less long this time. So I have a list with me. I'm just going through them. I'm not going to delete my footage again. We're first going to my top 5 worst books of the year, then my top 5 best books of the year, and then I'm going to show you some graphs and I'm going to compare them to last year and tell you everything that is standing out. So let's start with it quickly, and I hope you find this as fun as I find it to make this and to look back on it. So to just get it over with, we're starting with the 5 worst books of the year. I'm starting with number 5, so that means that's like the least worst book that I've read this year. I had 4 2-star ratings and 1 1-star, so that was exactly enough to have a top 5 last year. I didn't have enough books that I rated this low that I could actually make a top 5. So, well, that's good for this video, but not good for me. So on 5 of this, sadly, a very disappointing top 5. On number 5 we have Serpent and Dove by Shelby Marin. This is a fantasy. It actually had everything that I was supposed to like, but I thought it to be cliche. I thought it to be weird against women. Women were treated very badly and it wasn't really pointed out. It was really like everyone talked about it like it was fine. It was about witches and it just didn't feel right. There was no moment in this book that I felt like, yeah, I'm really enjoying this. Everything was cringy, everything, it just didn't make sense. The love interest didn't make sense. I really didn't like it. So, I don't really know what exactly was it that made me so, well, actually at that moment really hate that book. So that is why it's at 5. Because of the books that I'm going to mention, it's the one I know I have the least amount of arguments or reasons why I would say this book is so bad. But I still thought it to be very bad and I'm not really excited about the sequel, but I'm probably still going to read it because that's how I am. But it will take a while. It will take a while until I kind of forgot why I found it so bad, and then I'm going to read the sequel probably. On number 4 we have Normal People by Sally Rooney, a very popular book. But why? There's literally nothing happening in this book, and that's the point. It's like the point that you follow people that are supposed to be normal people and you follow their relationship through the years and how it changes and how it's sometimes friendship and sometimes a little bit more complicated than that. But as you follow, each chapter is a different time and you don't see what happens in between. You don't even really follow that. You really still can't understand why they act a certain way. They just are suddenly at that moment, at the new chapter, they're a different kind of person and their relationship doesn't work that way anymore. And I just found it to be extremely boring and not normal people. I really couldn't follow what they were doing. Really hated it. I watched the TV series as well. I thought that one to be a lot better, but eventually I didn't even finish the series just because I at the moment didn't have time and then just forgot to watch the last episode. So even the series wasn't like that noteworthy, but I thought the acting in the series was just really great, so that made it a little bit better. So it's one of the only things I would actually say watch the TV series instead of read the book, which I usually obviously never do. So that's at 4. Both I gave 2 stars out of 5. Serpent and Dove as well. Then a book that I really recently finished in December. It got me in a reading slump, so it's no surprise that it's on this list. And that is Gardens of Delight by Erica James. I read it in Dutch, where it's called Italiaans for Beginners. This is supposed to be a chick lit romance, and it has everything a chick lit romance has, but done poorly. And then some sad things on top of it. So let me explain. As you understand with this title, it is about a bit of romance. And they're going to Italy, and they're going to dive into their own history to find out what they're actually, where they came from, and well, but the characters are very bad. Like, you have good and evil, there's no in between. The evil characters, you don't understand why they are this way, they have no character arc, they don't get better, and they obviously don't get their happy ending. Then the good characters are just perfect, they're perfect, there's nothing bad with them, nothing that could possibly be wrong with them, but even they don't all get their happy endings. And I know that is happening in real life. People don't always get their happy ending that they deserve, but I'm reading a chick lit. There's literally no other reason to read a chick lit than to feel like happy and warm. So if it even doesn't do that, why would you read it? And it also takes place in Italy for a part, but I didn't feel transported at all. I wasn't like, oh, I feel like I'm on the beach now. No, it was bad. Not going to read that one again, or anything else by Erica James probably. I really was in a bad slump because of this book. Also 2 stars. The 1 star that I gave extra, like 1 star is the minimum, it didn't get the minimum for me because I did want to know how it ended. I did want to know how it ended, but the ending was really bad as well. So after all, I should have DNF'd it, but I didn't know. So, well, 2 stars. And then on place 2 is a review copy, so that is always a little bit cringy. And it's Sterrenjager by Yen Mingpan, a young adult science fiction, which is cool, very cool, but it was so bad. Oh my god, I don't even know where to start. The only thing that led me to give this one 2 stars is because of all the representation in there, which was done nicely in my opinion. All different kinds of representation were in here, and I think it's good that the new generation has books where this is just normal common sense, that there is a diverse cast. I really like that, and for that I give her an extra star. But the book was so bad, the plot was really bad, everything was like, it was literally like, oh no, we can't continue, there is a wall where we didn't expect one. Oh, luckily we have someone with us that suddenly can walk through walls which we didn't know, and he can take us. Now we're on the other end, there's no problem anymore. That's literally how the whole book went. So that is so childish and so not what I wanted to read. So no, very bad. I also said so in my review, which is uncomfortable. I own 2 other books by her. So I hope that those are better, please. And then the number 1 worst book was unfortunately also a copy that was sent to me by the author herself to review. And that was Firewave by Anna Stanojevic, a self-published fantasy. And the self-publishing part really is a part of the problem, I feel like. Because there were so many cliche and cringy things that an editor could have gotten out of here. And there was a lot of potential, let's just say it this way. But the same as with the Sterrenjager I just talked about, you had so many things that were being so convenient. I remember something, this is one of the first books I read this year, so it's a little bit harder to talk about it, but because I don't remember that well anymore. But I remember something like a secret language, an old Norwegian language that no one really could speak, but obviously they found a sign, like a character, and this main character very conveniently just did a course on this Norwegian old forgotten language, and this character was in there. So she knew exactly what was happening and could like be better than all the detectives in the book to like try to solve these murder mysteries. And everything went like that. So I tried to be giving some constructive feedback to the author because she actually sent it directly to me. And she was really grateful for that, which I think is very professional that you can handle critiques so well. And I actually recently got the sequel to this, which I am very scared to read because I hope I won't find it as bad because that would be uncomfortable. But I really am interested to see if her writing got any better because everyone needs to practice. And that is why self-publishing can be really tricky, because an editor could show her where the plot holes were and what was a little bit too convenient for the story. An editor would have gotten that out. So yeah, that is my #1 worst book of the year, with 1 star, which I usually never give. And then on to something more positive, the top 5 of the best books that I've read this year. It was actually quite hard. I read 9 5-star ratings, which is quite a lot. And I needed to choose 5 for my top 5. And I've left some books out that I found in some way problematic or I had read already before. Because if they were problematic in some way, I don't want to recommend them to you all the time. So they're just not in my best books, even though I enjoyed them so much. And if I reread them, it wasn't a surprise. So it doesn't feel fair to put them in the best books I've read in 2022. So then eventually I got to 5 books. I want to have an honorable mention to Oktoberkoning by Pamela Sharon, a YA thriller review copy. It was the first review copy that I got that I truly can see as one of my favorites now, which was really great. But it's just one I couldn't really recommend to you that easily because it's a Dutch one, and also one that if I compare them to the books that I'm going to name, it's not that good. But my enjoyment was very, very high. So, quickly starting with on number 5, a classic that I didn't expect to love this much, and that was A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. I read it in autumn this year. Everyone knows the story, I guess. I've seen the movies, but I didn't expect to love the jokes in here, the absolutely not subtle meaning of everything. I just loved how it was so clear, but still a very exciting children's story and written so well. I really want to read more by Charles Dickens. I really, really loved it. I gave it 5 stars, obviously, but everything in this top 5 had 5 stars. On 4, a book that I didn't expect to read this year, so that might have helped for it to come so high in my top 5 because it was such a surprise. That is The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart. A fantasy where they use bone magic. And this girl that doesn't want to use the bone shard magic but does. And well, I don't really remember why I found it so great. I really need to look into that again, but the vibe was just perfect for me. And that is so vague, I understand, but fantasy is always my most read genre and I just love fantasy. And if you can create a world that I really feel sucked into, that I really can spend all my time when I'm like chilling and I'm trying to read, if that is in a fantasy world and you have this power over me, then I'm really enthusiastic and you easily can get a 5 star, even though I don't really remember that well. Well, I do remember there was a lot with keys and they needed to deserve them and their father gave them, it was, oh, and the plot twists in here. Oh my, they were so good. I really didn't see them coming. I thought I saw them coming, but then there was like, you know, when it happens, when there's a plot twist and you're like, aha, I knew it. And then the plot twist gets the plot twist and then you're like, no, wait, what? Oh, I loved it. So yeah, really looking forward to read The Bone Shard Emperor, which is the second part. Then on number 3, a book that was actually my 5-star prediction video. So I did expect to give it 5 stars, but it was very different from what I expected. And that is The Invisible Life of Eddie LaRue by V. Schwab. Fee Schwab is becoming one of my favorite authors. I've read 3 books by her now, which 2 are in my top favorites ever, and 1 I didn't really care for, that was Gallant, but I hear from a lot of people that Gallant wasn't their favorite. The Invisible Life of Eddie LaRue is about a woman that is making a pact with the devil to, well, escape the life that she doesn't want to live. But the deal makes sure that she is young forever, she will live forever, she will forever be 23, but no one will remember her. As soon as the door closes between her and the person has forgotten that she exists, so she cannot leave a mark on this earth. And it actually is a book that talks a lot about what makes it worth it to live, and that is beautifully done. Very, very beautifully written, and a very interesting plot. And I loved Henry, the other main character in here. It was a lovely character, so that also helped. Then on 2, which was very exciting because I really was in a doubt if I should make this number 1. If you look back at me, at my excitement, it might maybe have been number 1, but a book that I'm probably going to reread very often and really can see as one of my favorite books ever, eventually came on number 1, and this one is not that, but this is Heartstopper Volume 1, which is a graphic novel about 2 boys that have a friendship and a little bit more than a friendship, and they're just at high school and have their high school problems, but it's so wholesome. Like, it isn't purely happy, but that doesn't matter. It's wholesome and it makes you feel so warm, and the characters immediately get to you, which is so powerful because it's only like a 45-minute read, and it came on my position 2. So of the best books I've read this year. So that is very incredible. By Alice Oseman. Did I tell you? It's by Alice Oseman. I need to read all the other volumes. I think volume 5 is getting out in this year, 2023. So exciting. And on number 1, is it a surprise? Not really. Last year my favorite book of the year was The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, and this year I cannot get around it. It's going to be Circe by Madeline Miller. This book was something completely different from The Song of Achilles, apart from that it's of course the same author, so the writing style is very comparable, but Circe is more a story for mythology lovers in my opinion. The Song of Achilles is for everyone. But Circe might be my favorite of the 2 because I love mythology, and Circe is such an interesting character that we don't really get to learn a lot about, usually. Because she's always like portrayed as the villain in the stories, and we usually follow Greek mythology from the perspective of the hero. So they just encounter Circe, are very mad at her, and then continue their quest or either die at her hands. But seeing the whole story from her perspective, this was such a feminist story about powerful women, and I loved it. She might be my new favorite character of all time, and Madeline Miller did it again. I only have a short story of her, Galatea, left. It was republished so that you now can have a physical copy, which I own. If that one is going to be my favorite of 2023, I'm going to be mad. I mean, there are so many good books. How can this author, with the only 2 actual books that she has, make me like 2 years in her grasp? It was just the best book ever. So read Circe. I really, really liked it. So I just noticed that I didn't even tell you how many books I've read. I've read 46 books in total, which means that I didn't get to my reading goal of 50 books per year. I could have. There are a lot of very small books on my TBR, on my physical TBR, that I'm going to read very soon. So I could have read them like in 2022 and finished my reading goal. But I wanted to read Dance with Dragons, which is a huge book of more than 1,000 pages, which also reads really slow. So I knew I wasn't going to get it, and I'm fine with it. But 46 was enough to make some stats. And I'm going to show them for you on the screen and compare them with last year. So I'm not going to show the graphs of last year because then it's too small in your screen, especially when you're watching it on like mobile phone or something. So I am just going to show the graphs of this year and I will tell you which is the difference, if it's remarkable. So first we have genre. Just as last year, my biggest genre was young adult fantasy, and then after that quickly follow fiction and adult fantasy, and it's actually exactly the same percentages as last year. Nothing special here. All the genres that I listed in this graph have at least one book, and last year was the same. Nothing really special about it, but funny to see, because in my head I did read a little less fantasy, but no, still a lot of fantasy. Then for language, it was 60% of English, which was also the same as last year. And last year I had an equal amount of Dutch books and translated books, and this year a little bit more of Dutch books, but that's because I got a lot more review copies and they are always in Dutch. So, well, not always, but almost always in Dutch. So that makes sense. But 60% in English is quite a lot actually. But okay, it's exactly the same as last year. Then we have series. Last year I read like 50% standalones. This year I read 60% standalones, which I already thought. I had the feeling I was not reading that many series. But almost all the series that I read were series openers, which is, of course, it feels like a trap. Because when are you ever going to finish that many series? I finished an equal amount of series as last year, but I only read one sequel. While like last year I read like 12 or something, I don't really remember, but like a good amount. And this year, not at all. One sequel, and I knew that was at the beginning of the year, so that is weird, I would say. Then for book clubs, there's really nothing special. The ratio are the same and all the book clubs still exist, so that's great, right? I have a lot of book clubs where I read books for. Then for rating, it's quite similar, actually more similar than I thought, but I did have one one-star rating, which I didn't have at all last year. And I have also a little bit more 2 stars, well actually only one more 2 star I think, but that means that it's slightly worse. Like, it's slightly worse than last year, but it's not that bad. And then the last thing that I also track is the source. Again, just as last year, 50% of the books that I read were bought for that specific moment. But something that was really different, as I got more review copies, a lot of percentage was from received books, so gifts or review copies or anything. But there was only one book that I already owned. The rest was either borrowed or gifted to me, or I bought for the specific occasion. Which, wow, that is bad. That is really bad. That also doesn't say anything good for my physical TBR. But okay, there is a reason that I could give you. I usually read like 9 books that I own already or borrow, and then I can award myself with a new book, and in between I read 3 other books. So I read 1 book that I own already, 3 books that are random, 1 book that I own already. But I make an exception for the Young Adult Festival. I buy the books for all the authors that come to this Young Adult Festival, and I read them the next year before the Young Adult Festival occurs again. But those books I count as books that I bought specifically for the event, because that is true. But I use them as like books that I already owned in my other lists. So that means that instead of reading normal books, I read those books because I read less books. Those were the only books I read. Do you get what I mean? Probably not. But I see the reason why this happened, and I think next year will be different because of this. So next year will probably be a little bit more books that I already own. So I hope at least. And those were the statistics of 2022. I hope you like to see this. I really like to make it and look back on my year. Cersei was my new favorite of the year. It's coming next to The Song of Achilles, which is, well, no surprise. Madeline Miller does it again for me. Let me know what was your favorite book of the year, and do you have any other interesting statistics to share? I hope you'll have a lovely day filled with books, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye! Oh, by the way, I had an average page amount of 406 pages, which no shit, I didn't finish 50 books. That's incredible. And an average rating of 3.7, which is way higher than it felt this year, but okay.